The day it all happened began like any other Saturday morning. The sun hung heavy in the sky, pouring light over the rows of neatly trimmed lawns and manicured hedges. Our neighborhood looked picture-perfect from the outside, the kind of place you'd think was peaceful, safe, and welcoming. But if you live long enough behind those pristine fences, you learn the difference between what's staged for appearances and what actually happens when people like me try to live with dignity in a space where not everyone believes you belong. I had decided weeks earlier to install a smart lock on the pool fence. It wasn't about making some grand statement. It was about safety, my family's safety, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing the pool area wouldn't be a free-for-all for anyone who wanted to wander in. I had already seen too many kids slip past the gate when no one was watching. I'd heard too many stories about drownings, about near misses, about tragedies that could have been prevented with one simple precaution. So, I invested in a smart lock, a device that would let homeowners in with a code and keep everyone else safe from wandering where they shouldn't. To me, it was a gesture of responsibility. To my HOA neighbor Karen and her son, it became a declaration of war. When I started the installation, Karen's son, maybe 22, 23 years old, appeared out of nowhere, storming into the pool area like he owned it. He was already shouting before I could even put the drill down. "You can't do that! You're not allowed to change anything without approval!" His face was red, the kind of red you only see when someone has decided they're the sheriff of the neighborhood. I tried to explain calmly, "This is for safety. It's not harming anything. It's actually protecting us all." But he wouldn't hear it. He pointed his finger at me like I was a criminal, like my hands on that lock meant I had broken some sacred covenant of the neighborhood. "You people think you can just come in here and do whatever you want," he said, the words sharp enough to cut through the morning air. Those words, "you people," hung there between us, heavy, ugly, full of the same poison that has followed me my whole life, no matter how far I move, no matter how well I do. I've heard it whispered in classrooms, I've seen it scribbled on bathroom stalls, I've felt it burned into stairs at grocery stores. But here it was again, spat out in broad daylight, in my own neighborhood. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. My father once told me, "You can't fight fire with fire. Stand with dignity. Stand with patience. Don't let them drag you down to the ground where they live." So I tried. I kept my voice steady. "Listen, I'm not breaking rules. I'm protecting children. If you have an issue, we can take it up with the HOA president." But he didn't want reason. He wanted control. And when he realized he couldn't intimidate me into stopping, he pulled out his phone. "Fine. I'm calling 911. You're trespassing." I stared at him in disbelief. Trespassing? On the pool I pay dues for, in a neighborhood I live in, on land my family contributes to every month? My stomach tightened. I knew what that call meant. It wasn't just about him trying to flex power. It was about weaponizing fear. Because in this country, when someone like me is accused of trespassing, the police don't come gentle. They come with suspicion already in their eyes. They come looking for guilt before they even know the truth. I tried to protest. "I live here. I have every right to be here." But he had already dialed. I could hear him spinning his story, painting me as some threat. "There's a man messing with the pool fence," he said. "I don't know if he lives here. He's refusing to leave." His voice trembled with a fake concern, a performance I'd seen before, one designed to make him the victim and me the danger. I felt my hands clench around the drill. My mind raced through headlines I had read. Black man shot after misunderstanding, black homeowner handcuffed outside his own house, black father arrested for trying to protect his kids. I thought of my family, of my children who would be waiting for me inside, who didn't need to see me led away in handcuffs because someone decided my presence was a crime. By the time the sirens echoed down the street, neighbors had already begun to gather. I saw curtains twitch. I saw people stepping out onto porches, whispering to each other, watching. Some looked curious, some looked entertained. None stepped forward. Not even when Karen herself appeared, her arms folded tight across her chest, her smile sharp and smug. "This is what happens when you don't follow the rules," she said under her breath, just loud enough for me to hear. The police car screeched to a stop, 2 officers stepping out, hands already near their holsters. My body stiffened. I lifted my hands slightly, not in surrender, but in a gesture of peace. I wanted them to see me clearly. I wanted no sudden moves, no misunderstandings. "Sir, step away from the fence," one of the officers ordered, his voice firm, his eyes scanning me up and down like I was a suspect before I even spoke. I obeyed, setting the drill down slowly on the concrete. My heart was pounding in my ears, but I kept my voice calm. Officers, I live here. I'm installing a lock for safety. I can show you proof of residence, my ID, my HOA payments. Karen's son jumped in before I could finish. He's lying! He doesn't have permission to be here. He's trespassing, tampering with property. The officers looked between us, and for a moment, I could see the scale tipping. On one side, a young white man with righteous indignation. On the other, me, black, holding tools, accused of breaking into a place I had every right to be. I took a breath, steadying myself. This was more than about a lock. This was about survival, about dignity, about refusing to be erased in the very space I call home. The silence in that moment was suffocating. The officers' eyes lingered on me, their hands close to weapons, their stance tense as though they were waiting for me to give them an excuse. Every second stretched like an eternity. I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on my shoulders. Every story of men and women who never made it home because someone decided their presence was a threat. I forced my voice to stay calm, to be steady even though my chest was burning with fear. Officer, I said, keeping my hands visible, I live here. My name is on the deed. I have the key fob for this very pool. I installed this lock for the safety of our children. Please let me show you my ID. One of the officers glanced at the other, hesitating. I could see doubt flickering in his eyes. Maybe he had heard this kind of story before. Maybe, for once, he was willing to give me the dignity of proof. But before he could answer, Karen's son leapt forward, shouting, "Don't listen to him. He doesn't belong here. He's making up lies. My mom runs the HOA, she knows everyone, and we've never seen him at a meeting." His voice cracked with rage, and for a moment, it almost worked. One of the officers took a step toward me, hand grazing the grip of his gun. My heart stopped. I could feel my knees wanting to buckle, but I stayed firm. "Sir," I repeated, "please check my wallet. It's in my pocket." Slowly, I'm going to pull it out. I moved deliberately, as though the whole world was watching, as though the wrong motion would end me. I handed over my ID, my address, the proof that I wasn't just a man at a fence. I was a homeowner, a father, a neighbor. The officer studied it carefully. Then he looked at the key fob I held out, the one that opened the very gate I stood beside. His expression shifted, the suspicion softening, replaced by something almost like shame. "This checks out," he finally said. Relief swept over me, but it didn't erase the humiliation of having to prove myself in front of my neighbors, in front of Karen, in front of her son who still looked at me with venom in his eyes. He couldn't stand that his attempt to paint me as an intruder had fallen apart. "This doesn't mean he can just do whatever he wants," Karen's son snapped. "You can't just change things without approval. He's not above the rules." I turned toward him, my voice low but steady. "The difference is I follow the rules. I respect this community. What I won't accept is being treated like a criminal in my own neighborhood." For a moment, there was silence again. The officers looked between us, then one of them spoke. "Ma'am, sir, this man has every right to be here. If there are disputes about HOA rules, that's for the board to resolve, not the police. Calling 911 for something like this is not appropriate." Karen's smile faltered. Her son scowled. The neighbors who had gathered began to drift back into their houses, though I could feel their eyes still burning on me from behind curtains. The show was over, but the damage was done. As the officers drove away, I stood there in the heavy stillness, staring at the fence, at the lock I had tried to install out of responsibility. My hands trembled, not from fear anymore, but from anger. Anger at the way dignity is stolen in small moments like these. Anger at how easily my life could have been shattered by one false accusation, one frightened twitch of a trigger finger. Later that evening, I sat with my family in our living room. My daughter climbed into my lap, sensing the heaviness I carried, her small arms wrapping around my neck. "Daddy," she asked softly, "why were the police here?" I swallowed hard, searching for words that wouldn't steal her innocence too soon. "Because sometimes," I said slowly, "people are afraid of what they don't understand. And sometimes people forget that we all deserve respect, no matter what we look like." Her big eyes studied me, unblinking. "But you didn't do anything wrong." "No, baby," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I didn't. And that's why we keep standing tall. We don't let their fear decide who we are." That night, as I lay awake, I thought of my father's words about dignity, about patience. I thought about the generations before me who fought for the right to walk freely, to live without fear of being accused of crimes they never committed. And I realized something important: every small act of resistance, whether it's installing a lock, speaking truth in the face of lies, or simply standing on your own property without shame, is part of that larger struggle. Karen and her son may never understand that. They may keep their whispered conversations, their stares, their meetings where my name comes up as though I'm an outsider. But the truth remains: I belong here. My family belongs here. And no amount of 911 calls, no performance of false fear, can erase that truth. In the days that followed, the smart lock was finally installed with official HOA approval. A few neighbors even came by quietly, offering nods of support, murmurs about how they had seen the whole thing and how wrong it had been. Their silence that day still stung, but their recognition reminded me that sometimes, even if justice is slow, it still finds its way through cracks in the walls people try to build. The memory of those flashing lights, of hands hovering near weapons, will never fully fade. But neither will the strength I felt standing firm, refusing to shrink, refusing to let fear dictate my worth. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about a pull fence or a smart lock. It was about the fight for dignity in everyday life, about the right to claim space without apology, about resisting the narrative that says some people don't belong even when they've paid every due, followed every rule, and stood with nothing but honesty. And so, I move forward, not bitter, not broken, but stronger, knowing that every time I stand tall, I honor not just myself, but the legacy of those who stood before me, and the hope of those who will come after.